All right, good morning, everybody. All right, so let's get started. Okay, let's go over yesterday. First of all, good morning, Bill. All right, so yesterday, here's what we had. All right, so I'm not going to go in exact order as they were identified, but I'll talk about the best performers for the room yesterday. One was IMV. This was not a symbol that I identified in the pre-market, although it was up. But some of you, the students, actually, in the coaching room, actually pointed this one out. This started to move towards the end of the day. So, very nice move up here, starting at about 2:25 Eastern. And then, as you can see, this just ran and went from about 285, let's say, by the time it would have been detectable, to about 442 at the high. So very nice move there. They announced yesterday data for an ongoing phase 2B trial. That's the reason why it went up, and it's actually unusual because that was announced, looks like, in the middle of the day. Actually, no, it wasn't. It was announced early in the morning, but I guess for some reason there was more buying pressure towards the end of the day. Yeah, so I'm not sure why it just kicked in at the end of the day, but it did. But we now have the more important news this morning, which is the part that I think why. Good morning, Chris. I think why it went up before the end of the day, and that is this. This morning they announced a $9 million registered direct offering priced at the market under NASDAQ rules. In short, basically the company's stock went up yesterday at first, pre-market, and then after the pre-market, it just kind of gradually, this is it. Sorry, right here, this is this gap here. I'm not sure when that happened. That looks like the 13th, okay. But this was yesterday, or sorry, the day, this was yesterday, sorry. So it gapped up, went sideways for a bit, and then jumped again. So it was up on the 13th as well. So you can see it barely traded. So there's more than one day here in time. But basically the stock wasn't really trading. So gaps up here, then resumes later. Okay. So that one, pretty nice move. All right, next up, now this is the one that was the best winner of yesterday. This one was the big one. That was ICVX. All right. Now, ICVX, pre-market, let's see here. Okay, there it is. So this was the start. Now, I had identified this stock because I had missed the move that it did on the 14th. This was one of the pre-market opportunities that was mentioned. But I had missed the move on the 14th. I looked at it. Looks like the volume was good, everything. Just for some reason it didn't catch my attention, which I'm a little surprised at because of the degree of movement, and the volume was there, I think. So anyway, this stock yesterday, we had observed that this had been a big mover that previous day, the 14th. We then brought this out, and as you can see, 8:30 to about 9:25 Eastern, or sorry, so this is Central Time. So from about 9:30 to 10:25 Eastern. Very nice move up. And this stock was halted 3 times. And as it was going up, I was setting targets. But as I mentioned in the coaching room, after a while, there was no clear target to point out. And this is a reality that when you get a stock that's really moving a lot, and it basically gets away from any of the action it's had in a long time, you really can't point out a target. So this one, the first target was the normal one, which was my projection based on data about the stock of how far it will go up intraday, or at the maximum move. It got to that pretty quick. The next one were some price levels that had appeared earlier in the year, but after a while it just kept going. So in short, I mentioned to everyone that if they weren't already in it, don't get in it now, it's too late. But later on, I did also mention that if the stock settles down, so before I departed from the morning session, I mentioned if the stock settles down into a tight range, trades sideways for a long time, and then suddenly the volume kicks in and it takes off, then that will be the only time I would say it makes any sense to get into it again, because at that point, you do have the high of the day as your logical target, since this stock was trading in a very technical manner. So it would be pretty clear that they would target the high of the day, and that's exactly what we saw. So we ran up to the high, and then it sold off. Now I'm sure there might have been some short sellers up here. I know the stock is hard to borrow, but not impossible to borrow. I think it's hard to borrow. Let me see. Yeah, it's hard to borrow, but not impossible to borrow. You could find shares, right? So I'm sure there were some short sellers up here who may have had buy stops sitting right above, and they got stopped out first. Then it comes down, which is probably the reason for that move anyway, to basically target a place where you knew there must be some people who were looking to buy up there because they probably were going to get stopped out. So anyway, this is the move, and then after that, it sold off. So again, this is a hard to borrow stock, but at the same time, if you're in the Funder Challenge, and you decide to short sell this, you should have been able to do that, no problem. But anyway, lots of opportunity there, as long as you didn't get in too late, and as long as you waited for an opportunity. All right, next up, we got Summit. SMMT, which of course has been a regular feature in our room. Summit, as you can see, is a mover. If you compare it, good morning, if you compare it to the NASDAQ over here, the yellow line is the QQQ, the NASDAQ ETF, and this green line is Summit. And basically, as you can see, Summit is moving in a much more dynamic percentage range than is the NASDAQ. NASDAQ looks like almost a flat line compared to this. And that's the ideal profile. That's the sort of stock we want, something that's really moving. So here it is. So Summit was moving again on the 15th. There's the open right there. It started off under where it closed the previous session. It starts to go up. I always mention that that's something that I like to look for, because if you've got a stock that is opening lower, right, than where it closed the previous day, and then starts to retread previous gains or previous ground, that's a lot easier to anticipate where it might go than a stock that's plowing into territory it hasn't been in a while, or perhaps into territory it's never been into. Maybe it's at all-time highs. So a stock that's already been up but slightly down and then starts to recover usually is a lot easier to read. So this one, a number of you got in and out of that. I didn't put out any particular alerts for Summit, but I know that a lot of you were following it. So I did mention that, yes, we see it's going up. And if you can take advantage of it, do. But as always, Summit does tend to trade in a very awkward manner. So you'll have these very long periods it does nothing, just chopping around, and suddenly, bam, you get a move. So it is completely excusable if you can't find good timing into getting into the stock. Basically, if you don't get in right at the point where it starts to move on this one, you don't really have a chance, right? You have to get in quick, and either it's going to go or it's not. There's nothing, there's no way to really get a build up like we saw for ICVX that built up, and then it went. This, on the other hand, not really. Okay, so ICVX in comparison yesterday, when it finally broke out, if you guys recall, I mentioned there was a key price level that the stock was running up against, which I believe was 927 was the price, something like that. And it kept bumping up against that price. In fact, hold on, I can tell you exactly if that was it. It was hard to see, but let me see if I can find it. Yeah, it was 927. Yep. So the price was 927. The stock was bumping up against that price point, but as I mentioned, if it could break out, the overnight high at the time was 984, in the pre-market, and the stock went to that no problem. And then after that, I just said basically it's got a lot of room, so we'll see how far it can go. So I did set some initial targets that were definitely important, like an old gap lower and things like that. But once it hit those, which happened pretty quickly, there was no place to expect it to go. So this one had a very nice build up, whereas SMMT rarely has that sort of build up anymore. It just kind of moves. So if you catch it where it does give you that long pause and then starts to run, great. But if you can't time it in here, don't worry, that's a tough one to time. All right, next up, another stock that was mentioned by you, the members, was RNA. Okay, so RNA, this is it from, this is from the 14th. So you can see this had a really big run on the 14th. Then yesterday, here we are. So this one started to move. It started under, so it went up on the 14th, closed. It opened slightly lower than the close of the 14th, but then began to move up, had a false start there, and then really took off here. So a number of you did take advantage of this, so good job on that. Pretty nice move yesterday, and much bigger move on the 14th. All right, next up, TCOM. Okay, so TCOM, pretty much a disaster as far as it just didn't go anywhere. So it had a lot of promise, but once the market opened, TCOM had its first move up, and then a really big move down, then after that basically died. So this one, there was a little bit of an opportunity going up, but it would be very forgivable if you couldn't get part of that. It was really quick, and then after that it fell apart. So nice move, but not a good enough one to stick to. All right, THRD, this was one that showed a lot of activity pre-market. It was down, and we just watched it to see if there were any opportunities, but nothing really came up. It just kind of went flat. Billy also started the day off looking very bearish and continued. So as I mentioned early in the session, this looked like a short selling opportunity after the open because it just went down. Good morning, Gene. So in short, this one did not, we saw it was moving pre-market. Usually Billy will go up if it's up pre-market, but in this case it sold off. So this one went down almost exactly to the lower price target, which would have been at, which would have been at 22.59, which I know I mentioned as well. So if any of you were short sellers, this one was definitely one of the best opportunities you had in the morning. It just went straight down. And it looked like it was going to go straight down right from the opening bell, too. So that one was not really that surprising. There were some other stocks. Novavax, Invax was moving pre-market yesterday, and it was moving down. And basically, you can see the gap here. So when it opened yesterday, it kind of bounced around, then very quickly started to sell off here. So right there was the moment where it screamed this really wanted to go lower. So at first, it started to go lower at first. It went sideways, but this would have been a nice area to look for a short anyway because it's down. Can't seem to go any higher. You can see the VWAP is tilted lower. So you know that the pressure is to the downside. So if you decide to begin to initiate a short here, that would have made sense. But definitely by the time you got to here, it's pretty clear this is selling off. So that was a very nice move down. And again, you can go long and short. So if you are comfortable short selling, folks, you can always do that. But as I've mentioned, it's better to do it on stocks. There's something like this one. They either were up big or something's happening that drives them down. Usually short selling works better on more well-known stocks like Novavax. It's usually harder to short sell more obscure stocks because usually the majority of the participants are buyers in those stocks. So just keep that in mind. So a stock like Moderna would make a great opportunity to short sell in the right situation, right? So, for example, here you have a big move up and it stops and it starts to come down. That's where you might make some money. On a side note, Moderna was mostly selling off yesterday, in yesterday's session. So there is the open. And it mostly went lower. I wouldn't say this was a fantastic short selling opportunity. It was very gradually going lower, so I wouldn't have been paying attention to it. I want something that looks more devastated, like Novavax did. That would be more like it. So a lot of these stocks I'll mention in the pre-market if they look like they could go either direction. So we don't know, but I'll let you know like if it looks like something that could potentially be a short. All right, so let's look at what's moving pre-market at the moment. I'm just going to try to find things that are moving with some good volume. Ooh. Oh my goodness. So after I took it off the list, guess what stock decides to fly? COSM. Now remember guys, this was a stock that I brought onto the radar some time ago because I mentioned the volume was really, really high and it was high consistently day after day after day. And I mentioned that eventually this might get above the price that we want, to be able to do some trading, which would have to be above $1. Well, right now it's at $3.11 and moving higher. So let's take a look at the time and sales, or the time and sales, and also the market depth. So there it is, 311 at 312, and there is the time and sales. So now this is saying it's down 62.18%, and I don't think they had a reverse split. Let me just see. They might have. I don't see it. Let me just double check. No reverse split. So I'm not sure why this is saying it's down when it's definitely up. So let me check something. Let me add this back to our list. Yeah, that is bizarre. Last was 308. They did? Okay. Well, I don't see it. That's why I'm curious about that. I don't actually see the reverse split. I'm looking for it, but I do not see it. But still, it does put it in the trading range we want. But where is that reverse split? Oh, sorry. Let me see. Yeah, I don't see it. Oh, there it is. That's weird. I don't see it on. Thank you. I didn't see it on there until you just pointed that out. But I'm actually surprised. Oh, okay. Sorry, because I hadn't scrolled. It was there. I actually didn't scroll down. There it is. And now it says 1 for 25 reverse split. You got it. That's exactly what happened. Yep. I didn't even notice it here, but I was looking at another screen and I hadn't scrolled. So that's correct. So 65 is correct. So what price would that mean they had it at? 639, looks like. Or something like that. Anyway. So now the stock is in the right price range. So that means that we've got an opportunity here. So it's back on the list for now. I would definitely put that on the radar for this morning. COSM. Okay. So that will be back on the radar. So normally, because I'm looking at a chart on the other screen on Thinkorswim, and usually there's the indicator at the bottom that lets you know if a split happened, but I don't see it, so that's a little odd. But I guess I know it's going to be added later today for Madison, but anyway. So anyway, just wondering why that part didn't show up on my end. So. Except for the news feed. So we got COSM as our first major one to watch. Now that is trading in the proper price range, it should go up. It should. It may be a pump and dump this morning, but judging by the way it traded pre-market, it went to a high of 639. I'm assuming that was right after the split. A reverse split, sold off sharply, went all the way down. And get this, it went all the way down to 35 cents after the split. So that's that means they literally sold it down to a value that wouldn't make any sense after the reverse. So I'm a little curious about that one, why they would sell it off so aggressively. I mean, that's impressive. They sold it off so much that it went down to the price range it was at previously. And then after that, it just shot up from 30 something cents all the way to almost $4, and now it's back at $3.44. So in the pre-market, I mean, I have to admit, this would have been nice to catch very early. Would have had to be up around 7 o'clock Eastern to catch it. At least the start of that move, but by the time we got to about 7:35 a.m. Eastern, that just took off in the pre-market. So COSM, there you have it. That one's now on the list again, and let's see how much volume it's trading. 15 million. Yep. So that's one of the reasons I like to keep some of these smaller ones that are under $1 on the radar. If they keep trading a lot of volume, eventually something's going to happen. The reverse split is one way to solve the problem of the stock being too cheap. But sometimes they're able to get it to move. So they were trying to get it above $1, as you saw. They were trying to push it, and then that didn't work. So therefore, as it was selling off, they finally came up with the obvious solution, which was a reverse split. All right, so that did work after all. Let's see what else we got. Applied UV, AUVI, not something I've heard of. Okay, so this one was trading under $1 yesterday. Very little volume. Pre-market, this is now trading at about $1.23. Let's see what it says. Disinfection technology company Applied UV announces strategic manufacturing and supply chain collaboration with Canon. Okay, so that was the news. Currently, the stock is up. Let's take a look at what type of volume it's got. Currently, 2.5 million shares, up 28.13%. Could be something, worth considering. So I will add this on the list as well as something to watch at the open. This is a new symbol as far as we're concerned, not something that was already on our list as far as I'm aware. So we'll have that for today. All right, and I need to add that into the regular list. Okay, so now we got that. Yeah, MULN I know, but it just hasn't done enough to get us to where we can trade it. So it's already something that I'm watching, but it still has not been fixed. So far they haven't been able to push it above $1 since, I don't know, it's been a while. So it's been trading under $1 since July, which means that they're going to have to get it above $1 pretty soon. So that means eventually they're going to have to do a reverse split because there's clearly no buyers in the stock. It keeps going down. So the only way to get it up would be a reverse split. So I'm sure they're preparing for it. But remember, the reverse split is an optical illusion. Once they do it, the stock is up, but you don't gain anything unless it actually gains relative to the new price. So in the case of COSM, it is actually down, but it's moving up very quickly from its lows after the reverse split. So if MULN did the same thing, that would be possibly a good opportunity. But as of right now, it's not really worth looking at the open until something happens. Yeah, there are quite a few stocks that recently had reverse splits that are trading under $1 that need some help. Yep. Oh well. Maxar Technologies agrees to be acquired by Advent for 129% premium. Oh, wow. Symbol is MXAR. Oh, sorry, that's not a NASDAQ stock, so never mind. But I just saw this one. It's a takeover, but we can't trade it anyway. And even if we could, there would be nothing to trade since it's already been taken over. Let's see, BNGO, no. Nope. Nope. OCGN is up overnight. It did hit a high of 180, closed yesterday around 145. But I don't know, the volume's not really that high. So FDA agreed to company's proposed controlled overall design for phase 3 confirmatory clinical trial agreement for NeoCart. I don't know, this might be something, but the volume is not really high. So it's currently trading, at about 152, but it did reach a high of 180, volume 754,000. I don't know. This one, maybe it does something. I'll add it to our big list for now on OCGN. But as of the moment, I don't see much reason to watch it at the open. So I'll add it to the major list, but I won't add it as a one to watch at the open. Novavax is still selling off, so I would say definitely watch that again at the open. NVAX. It was a big mover down yesterday. It could be a big mover today as well, either down or up, depending on where the market sentiment is. But so they offered a $65 million worth of public stock, and it's down, but I don't think that's the only reason it's down. So Novavax should be another potential opportunity today. We'll see. All right, so I got to jump over to the coaching room, guys. So I'll see you guys in just a second. For those of you who are not part of the coaching room, for whatever reason, make sure you become a member. Just go to fundertrading.com. All right, guys. See you in the coaching room for those of you who are there. Thanks.